Hello and welcome to the Holon Network podcast for April 20th, 2023. This week I have joining me,
Hey, I'm Digital Tinker.
and I'm Gatorbite. Yo, Digital, how's it going this week, my friend?
It's been a bit of a hectic one. Got a lot going on at work, and right now dog sitting, so don't have my normal setup.
Hello and welcome to gotcha. You sound good on this side. I'm going to switch to my headset real quick because, reasons. It's not that I have
Hey, I'm
pterodactyls.
Digital Tinker.
And I'm Gatorbite. And I hear a loop. Perfect. Okay, at least we know the audio's working. I'll go ahead and mute that. And thanks, Schmog, for joining us
It's
live in the
surprising
chat. Go ahead, Digital.
Mine started looping before yours did, so I'm kind of surprised.
It might have been because I was in the process of plugging my headset in and I didn't realize it until they were
Ah,
all the way plugged in. So, hey, we've been doing this for a few years now. We're totally set up. It's always working every single time. Not. We're having fun with it. Here to talk about this week's privacy, security, and different projects that are going on. Help get you
you did
those.
try and jinx it again.
I did?
Well, you updated Fedora right beforehand.
Oh, no, I did that last night. We went from Fedora 37 to Fedora 38 just fine. Did some testing. But the one thing I didn't test is streaming to Twitch on OBS. Regular OBS testing, sure, no problem. But I will have it be known I didn't have to change anything inside of my OBS. All of the interfaces came up the way it was supposed to. I'm running it off of the Framework laptop. I've got my HDMI plugged into my USB hub that hosts everything. So, knock on wood, things are working well. So, what's going on with you this week, Digital?
Um, Trying to get computers reimaged because of potential QBot infections that were partially stopped, but still need cleaned up, and bunch of weird little things on our antivirus I'm trying to keep an eye on, but there's definitely a lot going on in the office with various things that weren't quite secured the way they should be, and it'll be interesting to hear about those when I get back to the office next week.
Oh boy. I've got a couple brand new customers coming in, which has been interesting because they're like, hey, this big piece of software that we as a company have been using for years? Yeah, we're bringing somebody brand new, green, bringing them in. So they're going to start taking over, and I'm taking off Monday. Thanks. Peace out. It's like, oh, cool. So we're going to go to training 101. Hope you have a learning subscription because we're going to jump in deep here and let's go for it. Nothing like a greenfield situation, right? So, with that, let's jump into this week's news. As always, let's kick things off with the current Bitcoin price of time of recording is $28,320.82. Gold per ounce is $2,016.70. Oil per barrel is $77.17. And the Dogecoin is 0.08442. Going over into our section for this week and vulnerabilities. Going to the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency vulnerability summary for the week of April 10th of 2023. Let's see what we have that pops up to us this time around.
There's a couple tens. BTS Electronics Redline Router has authentication bypass by alternate name vulnerability in DTS Electronics Redline Router firmware. Allows authentication bypass. The issue affects Redline Router before 7.17 and authentication bypass by primary weakness vulnerability in the same thing, on the same version. Those are, like I said, both 10s with CVE 2023 1803 and 1833. And then there's a Safe Eval project, Safe Eval. All versions of the package Safe Eval are vulnerable to prototype pollution via Safe Eval function due to improper sanitization of its parameter content. Also a 10 and CVE 2023 26121.
And coming around to 9.8, we've got a couple from WordPress. So a vulnerability was found in HD FLV player plugin up to 1.7 point It has been rated as a critical. Affected by this issue is the function hd underscore add underscore media slash hd underscore update underscore media of the file function PHP, or functions PHP. The manipulation of the argument name leads to SQL injection, and the attack may be launched remotely. Upgrading to version 1.8 is able to address this issue. The name of the patch is a long string that we'll have in the show notes, but it's not going to be repeated over the air. It is recommended to upgrade the affected component, which is VDB225350 as the identifier assigned to this vulnerability. CVSS score of an 8.8, CVE of 2012 10011. To follow up, there is a second WordPress vulnerability in which a classified as critical has been found in the Dynamic Widgets plugin up to 1.5.10. This issue affects some unknown processes of the file class dynwid underscore class.php. The manipulation leads to a SQL injection, and the attack may be initiated remotely. Upgrading to version 1.5.11 is able to address the issue. It is recommended to upgrade the affected component, and the identifier is VDB225353 and has been assigned to this vulnerability. CVSS score of a 9.8, CVE of 20151010.
iPhones have a memory corruption issue that was addressed with improved state management. The issue is fixed in iOS 16, and that may be able to execute arbitrary code with kernel privileges. The 9.8 CD 2022 46709.
It looks like there's at least one more WordPress that was a Hummingbird WordPress plugin before 3.4.2 does not contain the valid generated file path for page cache files before writing them, leading to a path traversal vulnerability in the page cache module. CVSS score of a 9.8, CVE of 2023 1478. Next fun one is one for TCP dump. The SMB protocol decoder in TCP dump version 4.99.3 can perform an out-of-bounds write when decoding a crafted network packet. CVSS score of a 9.8, CVE of 2023 1801. And scrolling down, there are some other 9.8s, but we're going to start rolling down our list here. I think we had covered this one. Oh, go ahead.
Microsoft multiple products. Microsoft message queuing remote code execution vulnerability 9.8 CVE 2023 21554. That's the first we've really seen something like that listed.
Right? It makes you wonder just how widespread that issue is. All right, scrolling on down, we've got some for Apache Linksys. I'm not familiar with that product, but if you're running it, there's also one for Microsoft Windows Server 2008, US Pragmatic General Multicast, or PGM, remote code execution vulnerability. CVSS score of a 9.8, CVE of 2023 28525.
I wonder if they'll actually release a patch for that.
Right.
For those Minecraft players, Bibliocraft for 2.4.6 does not sanitize path traversal characters in file names, allowing restricted write access to almost anywhere on the file system. This includes the Minecraft mods folder, which results in code execution. One's a 9.8 and CVE 2023 29478.
Oh, that's
That
funny.
is hilarious.
No kidding. All right, scrolling. There's another Microsoft multiple products, and then look at this list, Digital. My word. Remote procedure call runtime remote code execution vulnerability for Microsoft multiple products. CVE score of an 8.8, CVE of 2023 21727. and then a whole list of Microsoft PostScript and PCL6 class printer driver remote code vulnerability for Windows Server 2012, for 2008. There's quite a few of them. It looks like they're all 8.8s, and they've got various CVE numbers. So if you're running PostScript, you've got that enabled. And PCL6 class printer driver remote code. Hopefully
Microsoft's
nobody's
getting
running
hit
that,
hard.
right? No kidding. Oh, and even further, even more down below.
Hmm.
I've oof. Oh, was that Patch Tuesday? That I think that follows with Patch Tuesday then.
Yeah, but 2008 wouldn't fall under Patch Tuesday.
You're right. Hey, if you're running an iPad, you might want to go through and make sure you're updated because an out-of-bounds write issue was addressed with improved input validation. The issue was fixed in iOS 15.7.5 and iPadOS 15.7.5, macOS Monterey 12.6.5, iOS 16.4.1, and iPadOS 16.4.1, and macOS Big Sur 11.7.6, macOS Ventura 13.3.1. The app may be able to execute arbitrary code with kernel privileges. Apple is aware of the report that this issue may have been actively exploited. CVSS score of an 8.6 and CVE of 2023 to 8206. Even more Microsoft Server.
It keeps going, as well as the multiple products. There's a bunch for Adobe, so if you're on Adobe products, look out for updates there.
Ooh, here's one for you Linux users. If you're using Screen, like Tmux, Screen's been around a long time. Socket.c and GNU Screen through 4.9.0, when installed set UID or set GUID, the default on platforms such as Arch Linux and FreeBSD allows local users to send a privileged SIG-HUP signal to any PID, causing a denial of service or disruption of target processes. CVSS score of a 7.8, CVE of 2023 24626. You weren't kidding on Adobe. All right.
There's more Microsoft coming too.
It looks like it. We've got another one for Linux kernel. An issue was discovered in arch/x86 kvm or vmx nested.c in the Linux kernel before 6.2.8. NVMX on x86-64 lack consistency checks for CR0 and CR4. CVSS score of a 7.8, CVE of 2023 30456.
And actually, these don't include Patch Tuesdays
Oh, seriously.
because that would have been the first Tuesday of the month before the 10th. It won't be till next week that the Patch Tuesday stuff comes out.
Fun stuff. All right, we ready to move on to the next section then, even though we're not at the bottom of this, or do we want? Looks like
It's mostly Microsoft and
it's
Siemens.
all right. Time to go update. If you need to be able to get more informations of National Vulnerability Database from NIST, you can go through and check our links in the show notes. If you need an up-to-date wall of different vulnerabilities that are updated hourly, go check out osv.dev/list. These are great resources to go check out. So let's get into our stories for this time around. First one up is the Lazarus Group add Linux malware to the arsenal in Operation Dream Job. This is from the Hacker News, reported on April 20th of 2023. So the notorious North Korean aligned state-sponsored actor known as Lazarus Group has been attributed to a new campaign aimed at Linux users. The attacks are part of a persistent and long-running activity tracked under the name Operation Dream Job, ESET said in a new report published today. The findings are crucial, at least and not least because it marks the first publicly documented example of the adversary using Linux malware as part of social engineering scheme. The Operation Dream Job, also known as Death Note or NukeSped, refers to multiple attack waves wherein the group leverages fraudulent job offers to trick unexpected targets into downloading malware. It also exhibits overlaps with the other two Lazarus clusters known as Operations Interception and Operation North Star. The attack chain discovered by ESET has no different is that it delivers a fake HSBC job offer as a decoy within a zip archive file that then is used to launch a Linux backdoor named SimpleXT, spelled SimpleXTEA. It's distributed via an Open Drive cloud storage account. While it extracts model used to distribute zip file is unknown, it's suspected to either be spear phishing or direct message on LinkedIn. The backdoor, written in C++, bears similarities to Badcall, a Windows Trojan previously attributed to the group. Furthermore, ESET said that it's identified commonalities between the artifacts used in the Dream Job campaign and those unearthed as part of the supply chain attack on the voice-over IP software developer 3CX that came into light last month. Also includes the command and control domain journal that's journalide.org, was one of the 4 C2 servers used by the malware families detected within the 3CX environment. Indications are that preparations for the supply chain attack are underway since December of 2022, when some of the components were committed to the GitHub hosted platform. Findings not only strengthen the existing links between the Lazarus group and the 3CX compromise, but also demonstrates that threat actors' continued success with staging supply chain attacks since 2020. You want to take the next one?
Critical flaws in VM2 JavaScript library can lead to remote code execution. Fresh round of patches have been made available for the VM2 JavaScript library to address 2 critical flaws that could be exploited to break out of sandbox protection and achieve code execution. Both the flaws, CV 2023-29199 and 30547, are rated 9.8 out of 10 on the CVSS scoring system and have been addressed in versions 3.9.16 and 3.9.17 respectively. That sounds like just go straight to 3.9.17. Successful exploitation of the bugs, which allows an attacker to raise an unsanitized host exception, could be weaponized to escape the sandbox and run arbitrary code in the host context. A threat actor can bypass the sandbox protections to gain remote code execution rights on the host running the sandbox, the maintainers of the VM2 library said in an alert. Credited with discovering and reporting the vulnerability is security researcher Seunghyung Lee, who has also released a proof of concept exploit for the 2 issues in question. It comes a little after 2 weeks after VM2 remediated another sandbox escape flaw that could lead to execution of arbitrary code on the underlying system. Worth noting that the researchers from Oxide detailed a critical remote code execution vulnerability in VM2 late last year that was codenamed Sandbreak.
Interesting stuff. Moving on to the next one from the Hacker News as well, reported on April 17th. Google uncovers apt41's use of open source GC2 tool to target media and job sites. So the Chinese nation-state group targeted by the unnamed Taiwanese media organization to deliver an open-source red teaming tool known as Google Command and Control, or GC2, amid broader abuse of Google's infrastructure for malicious end. The tech giant's Threat Analysis Group, or TAG, attributed the campaign to a threat actor it tracks under the geological and geological themed moniker Hoodoo, Hoodoo, has also gone by the names of Apt41, Barism, Bronze Atlas, Wicked Panda, and Wintai. The starting point of the attack is a phishing email that contains a link to the password-protected file hosted on Google Drive, which in turn incorporates a Go-based GC2 tool to read the commands from Google Sheets and exfiltrate data using the Google Storage Service. After installation on the victim's machine, the malware queries Google Sheets to obtain attacker commands. Google's cloud division says in the sixth Threat Horizon report. In addition to the exfiltration via Drive, GC2 enables the attacker to download additional files from Drive into the victim's machine. Google says the threat actor previously utilized the same malware in July of 2022 to target an Italian job search website. The development is notable for two reasons. First, it suggests that Chinese threat groups are increasingly relying on publicly available tooling like Cobalt Strike and GC2 to confuse attribution efforts. Secondly, it also points to the growing adoption of malware and tools written in the Go programming language, owing to its cross-platform compatibility and its modular nature. Google further cautioned that the undeniable value of cloud services have made them lucrative targets for cybercriminals and government-backed actors alike, either as hosts for malware or providing the infrastructure for command and control. In a case point to those using Google Drive for storing malware such as uSnurf, aka Ganzi or ISFB, and Dice Loader, aka Lizar or Tyrion, the form of zip archive files as part of the disparate phishing campaigns. The most common vector used in the compromising any network, including cloud instances, is to take over an account's credentials directly, either because there's no password, as with some default configurations, or because a credential has been leaked or recycled or is generally so weak it to be as guessable. Google Cloud's Christopher Porter said. The findings come 3 months after Google's cloud details apt10s, aka Bronze Riverside, Cicada, Potassium, or Stone Panda, targeting of cloud infrastructure and VPN technologies to breach enterprise environments and exfiltrate data of interest. All right. Any other stories that you wanted to go through and cover for the vulnerability section?
Nope.
Cool. Let's roll into our next one. So our next category is This Week in Privacy or Lack Thereof. I saw this today as we were getting ready for the show, and it looks like Proton is launching an end-to-end encrypted password manager. So in addition to encrypting your passwords, Proton Pass applies the same layer of security to stored usernames, notes, and web addresses. We've talked about Proton Mail. We've talked about Proton VPN in the past. So it was interesting to see. This is yet another thing that they're adding to their suite of options that you can purchase. So let's find out more about it from The Verge. Proton, the company behind Proton Mail, has announced the launch of the new password manager, Proton Pass. While the service will eventually become free for everyone to use, it's currently only available as a beta to the Proton's lifetime and visionary users for now. As is the case with Proton's other products, Proton Pass uses end-to-end encryption and supposes to keep your personal information away from prying eyes, including third parties and Proton itself. In addition to letting you store usernames, passwords, and notes, you can also add or randomly generate email aliases that you can use as replacements for your real address. Proton's new password manager not only applies E2EE to your passwords, but also to the usernames, web addresses, and other fields associated with your login information. In a blog post explaining the service's security model, Proton notes that all cryptographic operations, including key generation and data encryption, happen locally on your device, which Proton says that it can't decrypt even if a third party requests it. This kind of, quote, zero knowledge, end quote, security model is the same type of feature touted by other popular password managers, including 1Password and LastPass, the latter which became the victim of a major data breach last year. After hackers stole LastPass's source code and encrypted password vaults, security experts criticized the company's response, with researcher Jerome Gosney stating that LastPass's claim of zero knowledge is a bald-faced lie, and it has about as much knowledge as the password manager can possibly get away with. Protecting your passwords properly requires a high level of competence with encryption and security, which few organizations have. Proton founder Andy Yen writes in a blog post. We've always been worried about the risk posed by a major password manager breach, which unfortunately became a reality with the recent hack of LastPass. The company's new password manager comes a little over a year after Proton acquired Simple Login, a tool that lets users send anonymous emails. Yen says this acquisition increased the company's ability to develop a new password manager without impacting efforts on other Proton services, and that it should help mitigate the risk associated with the using of insecure password managers with Proton's range of products. Proton plans on making this password manager open source once it's been released to the public, and it also is offering $10,000 in reward for security researchers who can find vulnerabilities within Proton Pass and its other products. The password manager is currently available on desktop, Android, iOS, and as a browser extension for Brave and Google Chrome, with the extensions for Firefox coming soon. It's not yet clear whether Proton Pass will offer support for pass keys, and the companies then immediately respond to The Verge's request for more information.
It'll definitely be interesting to see once they make it open source how many people go after it, given how big a name Proton is.
Right? I concur. I will say I've been pretty happy with their services thus far. All right, you want to take the next one?
Yeah, so there's a pretty famous scene from Ghost in the Shell's 1995 movie where a character uses a pistol to shoot a couple bullets at a car. One of them just happens to be a GPS receiver, or transmitter even. Well, now New York Police Department can shoot the same thing at your car, just a bit bigger. The Star Chase Guardian HX uses the lower receiver from an AR-15 rifle and launches adhesive-tipped GPS trackers to allow cops to track a vehicle remotely. It was debuted by the New York Police Department yesterday as its latest set of high-tech policing equipment. We New York denizens will soon come face to face with robot dogs, Daleks, and something new: a pneumatic gun that fires a sticky GPS tracker at a moving vehicle. It's meant to create an alternative to the standard police pursuit, allowing cops to remotely track a fleeing vehicle without sending a squad of interceptors to tail it. But in the hands of a department known for its surveillance abuses, the presence of any new tracking technology is worrying. The launcher is based on, of all things, the AR-15 rifle, Guardian's lower receiver, part of the gun that holds the stock pistol grip and trigger assembly, safety switch, and magazine. It is interchangeable with any other AR-style rifle, assuming since the AR lower's receiver is the part that contains the serial number, these may legally count as AR-15s. Those accessories, too, are cross-compatible save for two things: the internal trigger assembly and magazine. The Guardian That's because in the Guardian, the trigger isn't a trigger and the magazine isn't a magazine. The trigger itself is more of a button, an electronic system that activates the release of pressurized gas to propel a GPS projectile. The magazine is actually a battery. All that tech makes for a single shot launcher capable of firing one adhesive tip GPS tracker before needing its barrel reloaded. That projectile travels at a claimed 37 miles per hour. It has a straightforward range of 35 feet. The company claims that with an arc, it can theoretically reach 60 feet. Once the tag is adhered to a vehicle, it pings Starchase with its location every 2 to 5 seconds. Starchase calls the Guardian a less lethal tool, making one wonder what would be lethal to a motor vehicle since Guardian isn't designed to be used on people. It says the NYPD has invested $19,500 on the Guardian HX venture. So I reached out to Starchase to ask exactly what the NYPD gets for that money and whether the company will charge the police department any additional fees beyond the initial price. For example, to provide tracking data, but Starchase did not respond by press time. So on one side, it's definitely much safer because if you don't have to have 10 police cars running behind this car running away, that will then invariably speed up and cause more potential issues within traffic. You're reducing risk to multiple people. The other nice thing is it looks like these trackers are fairly large and are going to be easy to spot. So it's not like they could be easily covertly shot and hidden. They would have to be planted like any other GPS tracker if they wanted to go in a covert method. But there again, they're easy to spot. So if the person gets away, they can fairly easily rip these off. It does look like they've got the adhesive piece of foam and then the actual tracker. So depending on how strong that foam is, it probably would not be that hard to quickly rip off and throw away.
Right. And out of the items that they went through and obtained, this one probably seems the most docile compared to the other things that they had mentioned with the robot dogs and the Daleks. It's like, okay, cool.
Dogs aren't supposed to have weapons attached still, right? Or was that again a state specific law?
So that's the question, right?
Yeah, that was a California ruling, wasn't it, as well? So
Yeah, yeah, because New York has had a long history of abusing different surveillance technology. So I'm curious to see where this goes. So it doesn't pull the Ghost in the Shell for me, and it's maybe because I've not watched it as many times. It goes more
okay.
back to the Fast and the Furious, where they shoot that gigantic freaking hook and it does an EMP to the car. But yeah, interesting stuff.
Curious. It said Daleks, but I don't know what that reference is.
So they've got a link to it. Let me clicky and let's find out what they're saying. Oh, the different types
Okay.
of Digidogs or the Boston Dynamic dogs.
Well, no, there's a one further down that's like a I don't even know what kind of shape to call that, but is safe for YouTube.
Oh, yeah, good call. Yeah. So we'll yeah. I'm scanning with what
Of course,
I
these
think
are
it
also
means. Yep.
there was a similar device to this that was deployed at one point where someone was hurt and it tried to arrest the person that was hurt instead of calling the ambulance.
Oh, that's great. Awesome. Yeah, I watched a couple episodes of Black Mirror. I think I'm good. I think I've seen this before. All
Police
right.
robot told a woman to go away after she tried to report crime, then sang a song, and it's the exact same one.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah,
No, no, no.
it was tried in the UK.
Ridiculous. All right. Getting away from robot dogs, let's talk about something else on the ICANN and VeriSign proposal that would allow any government to seize domain names. So this is a article from freespeech.com. We're just going to read the article, the snippet from Slashdot, which is ICANN and VeriSign have quietly proposed an enormous change to the global name or global domain name policy, and they've proposed the renewal of the .NET registry agreement, which is now open for public comments. They've proposed allowing any government in the world to cancel, redirect, or transfer their control application domain names. This is an outrageous and dangerous proposal that must be stopped, as it does not respect due process. While the proposal is only currently for the .NET domain names, presumably that would also start to apply to other extensions like .com, as those contracts come up for renewal. The proposed the proposal represents a complete government takeover of domain names with no due process protections for registrants. It would be usurp the roles of registrars, making governments go directly to VeriSign or other registries that adopt similar language to achieve anything they desire. Is literally overturns more than 2 decades of global domain name policy. Furthermore, the ICANN and VeriSign have deliberately timed the comment period to avoid public scrutiny. The public comment period opened on April 13th of 2023 and is scheduled to end currently on May 25th of 2023. However, the ICANN 67 public meeting was held between March 11th and March 16th. ICANN 77 meeting was held between June 12th and June 15th. Thus, they published the proposal only after the ICANN 76 public meeting had ended, where it could have been asked ICANN staff and broad board questions about the proposal and seek to end the public comment period before ICANN 77 begins. This is likely not by chance, but by design. So wanted to make people aware of it. Let's keep an eye on it, and we'll see what like EFF pops up and says. But this could have global effects, not just here in the States.
Microsoft expands Start menu ads tests with new treatments. Microsoft is testing new ads in the Windows Start menu, or what it describes as new treatments, for users logged into local accounts as part of a badging expansion. This feature has been under testing since at least November 2022, and some of these notifications from Microsoft accounts in the Start menu are already being displayed to users who have installed last month's Windows 11 preview update or this week's Patch Tuesday security updates. Because that's what we want, people not installing security updates. We're continuing the exploration of badging on the Start menu with several new treatments for users logging in with local user accounts to highlight the benefits of signing in with a Microsoft account, says Microsoft's Amanda Legwinski and Brandon LeBlanc. If you see one of these treatments, give us feedback on what you think. As a reminder, it is normal for us to try out different concepts in the dev channel to get feedback. New features rolling out with Windows 11 Insider Preview Build 23435 to users insiders in the dev channel, designed to help Microsoft try out various concepts and collect user feedback. It's important to mention that the feature tested in the dev channel may never get released or be heavily tweaked once made available to general customers. When the systems with the new treatment of badging on the Start menu roll out, the ads will show up in the sign out flyout of the Windows 11 Start menu. Things like sign into your Microsoft account. Use Microsoft 365 for free. Keep your account safer with Microsoft Account Security. Access your files from anywhere. You'll get 5 gigabytes of cloud storage for free when you sign in.
So the fun part is digital. I love that they have all these fancy words, and then ultimately the last thing that you read was the new treatments of badging on the Start system will roll out. The ads will show up in the sign out flyout. These are just straight up Amazon, or these are straight up Microsoft ads for signing in with an account,
Mm-hmm.
specifically targeting local users.
Yeah, it's nothing new. They've made it harder and harder for local accounts to be used.
Oh yeah,
They want everyone on the online version.
yeah. So I was sharing with you right before we went live. Ended up picking up a refurbed Lenovo T480 for my mom, and literally as I'm opening up the box, it's a refurb by Amazon. Okay, great. There are instructions on how to go through and set up Windows 10 without an online account, or if you do sign in, how to go through, make a local account, and then delete the original user. Being printed off on paper and slid into with examples inside of these refurbs. And I'm like, okay, I've seen some other YouTubers talk about that, but this is becoming an issue. And a lot of people are staying back on Windows 10 because of this, because Windows 11 has gotten even harder to try to use a local account.
Yeah, I see no reason to upgrade my gaming machine, and everything else is Linux.
Yeehaw. I'm okay with this. I will say I've got a couple Windows 11 boxes because of gaming, and I thought, oh, sweet, this is fine. You get higher FPSs if you do the Windows 11. And I tell you what, the hassle of having to sign into a Microsoft account, even to download and run Minecraft now, is just ridiculous, in my humble opinion.
And so I was going to try out Fusion 360. It's like, I wonder if that works under Steam Proton.
Mm.
Oh, they have a version. They have a check whenever you install it to make sure it's on Windows, so you can't install it without a bunch of hacks.
Okay. Well, I will say one more thing that has closed the Windows gaming door for me. While sure we like playing like Fortnite because of people who are remote and it's cross-platform, they did successfully now turn on multiplayer for the Steam Deck when it comes to Halo Infinite. So I'm a little bit excited about that. That was one of my holdouts.
I think VR is still going to be the big thing that holds me back because there's still that slight performance hit of trying to do the API call translation.
100% there. I don't doubt that 100%. Oh, fun stuff. Let's roll on to our next one, which is from EFF. The Earn It bill is back, seeking to scan our messages and photos. This is reported by EFF on April 20th. We've talked about this in the past, but as a quick recap, the Earn It Act creates an unelected government commission, stacks it with law enforcement personnel, and then tasks it with creating best practices for running an internet website or app. The act then removes the nearly 30-year-old legal protections for users and website owners, allowing state legislators to encourage civil lawsuits and prosecution against those who don't follow the government's, quote, best practices. As long as they somehow tie changes in law to child sexual abuse, the state lawmakers will be able to avoid long-standing legal protections and pass new laws that will allow for criminal prosecution and civil lawsuits against websites that don't give police special access to their users' messages and photos. The users' messages and photos. Websites and apps that use end-to-end encryption to protect users' privacy will be pressured to remove or compromise security of their services, or they'll face prosecutions and lawsuits. If the Earn It bill passes, we're likely to see state lawmakers step in and mandate scanning of messages and other files similar to the plan that Apple wisely walked away from last year. There's no doubt sponsors intend this bill to scan users' messages, photos, files as they wrote in with that goal in mind. They even suggest specific scanning software that could be used on a user in a document published last year. The bill also makes specific allowances to allow the use of encryption to constitute evidence in court against service providers. The bill's language purporting to protect encryption doesn't do the job. Under pressure, the bill sponsors did add language that purports to protect encryption, but once you take a closer look, it's a shell game. The bill clearly leaves room to impose forms of a client-side scanning, which is a method for violating users' privacy by sending data to law enforcement straight from the user's device before a message is encrypted. EFF has long held that the client-side scanning violates the privacy promise of end-to-end encryption, even though it allows the encryption process to proceed in a narrow, limited sense. And the 2021 paper by 10 leading technologists held that client-side scanners are dangerous to democracy, amounting to bugs in our pockets. So it goes much deeper. There is a call to action. So we need your support for the Earn It Act one more time. Digital rights supporters send more than 200,000 messages to Congress to kill earlier versions of this bill. So we've beaten it twice before. We can do it again. There are currently dangerous proposals that could mandate client-side scanning schemes in the UK and in the European Union as well. But we don't need to resign ourselves to a world of constant surveillance. In democratic nations, supporters of a free, secure, and private internet can win if we speak up now. For the call to action, there is a link in the show notes to the article on who you need to be able to contact to let your Congress individuals know that you are opposing this, that you don't want it supported, and reasons why. Digital, you got the next one?
EFF to Ninth Circuit. Twitter has First Amendment right to ban users, including presidents. Time and time again, we've said it and courts have ruled, but social media platforms have the First Amendment right to ban users. We've argued that banned users cannot successfully sue platforms for acting as government censors without showing that the platform willfully and fully ceded their editorial discretion to the government. But nevertheless, the lawsuits keep getting filed. This time, former President Trump is the lead plaintiff in yet another must-carry lawsuit, this one against Twitter. And we have again filed an amicus brief that explains how editorial freedom online benefits users by encouraging diverse forums for speech. Twitter has also argued that the case is moot since it restored Trump's account. Trump and the other plaintiffs claimed that Biden administration officials threatened to amend Section 230 unless Twitter deplatformed Trump. Not coincidentally, Section 230 provides immunity to platforms from these very lawsuits. Transformed Twitter into a state actor, government coercion and involvement in private companies' content moderation practices raise serious concerns, but in most situations, those concerns are best directed at the government itself. Even if officials urge Twitter to act against certain users, Twitter cannot be liable unless it abandoned its editorial principles and adopted the government's decisions in their place. Only under these well-defined and limited circumstances should a court find that Twitter is a state actor, we told the court. The facts alleged in this case do not support that finding. In many cases, the government is free to talk to Twitter, and Twitter is free to listen or not listen. As our brief argues, treating Twitter as a state actor and subjecting it to lawsuits would actually violate Twitter's own First Amendment right to be freed from governmental, including judicial, interference.
As the world turns. And is it Twitter anymore, or is it Company X?
Yeah.
Which is something we didn't include in the news, but there's all sorts of shell games going on now.
Mm-hmm. And he's got to get his own branding in there so everyone knows it's him in charge.
Yeah. Let's talk about this week in security. I think this one's yours as well.
Next to our NSO hacked iPhones without user clicks in 3 new ways, researchers say. Israeli spy maker NSO Group employed at least 3 new zero-click hacks against iPhones last year, finding ways to penetrate some of Apple's latest software, researchers at Citizen Lab have discovered. The attack struck phones with iOS 15 and early versions of iOS 16 operating software, Citizen Lab said in a report Tuesday. The lab, based in University of Toronto, shared its results with Apple, which has now fixed the flaws that NSO has been exploiting. It's the latest sign of NSO's ongoing efforts to create spyware that penetrates iPhones without users taking any actions that allow it in. Citizen Lab has also detected multiple NSO hacking methods in the past years while examining the phones of likely targets, including human rights workers and journalists. While it's unsettling to civil rights groups that NSO was able to come up with multiple new means of attack, it did not surprise them. It is their core business, says Bill Marzak, senior researcher at Citizens Lab. Despite Apple notifying targets and the Commerce Department putting NSO on a blacklist, and the Israeli ministry cracking down on export licenses, which are all good steps in raising costs, NSO for the moment is absorbing those costs. Given the financial and legal fights NSO is involved in, Marzak said it was an open question how long NSO could keep finding or buying new exploits that are effective. With NSO's prominence has made it a symbol of government-level hacking, its repeated high-profile targeting has exposed it to researchers who are learning more of its tricks. Working together and armed with new electronic evidence of attack, Citizens Lab and Apple went back to old phones and found traces of other attack methods. That deeper knowledge will continue to grow, making future detections easier. NSO spokesman Lyron Brook declined to say whether the company was behind the hacks or whether it had still more attacks that are equally effective. He faulted Citizen Lab for failing to disclose its underlying data. Seems a bit odd, considering they exposed it to Apple, who is the one that ethically should be reported to for vulnerabilities.
Right.
NSO adheres to strict regulation, and its technology is used by its governmental customers to fight terror and crime around the world, Brook said by email. It was unclear how many people were hacked with the newly discovered method, and Citizen Lab declined to identify the ones it knew about, for good reason. An Apple spokesman who provided information on the condition that it not be named said the threats affected a very small number of our customers and that it would continue to build more defenses into its products. In one encouraging sign, some of the most recent attacks failed against users who had activated Apple's lockdown mode, which stops some communication from unknown callers and reduces the number of programs that are automatically invoked.
Interesting stuff.
Sounds like everyone has their eyes trained on NSO's tactics, and they're not quite working as well as they used to, which
Right?
is overall hopefully good.
Absolutely.
But this last one was a bit odd to me. Cybersecurity firms to launch legal support fund advocacy group for ethical hackers. Coalition of cybersecurity companies and organizations unveiled several initiatives on Thursday intended to encourage ethical hackers to discover and disclose vulnerabilities and to protect them from legal trouble if they do so. Google and other cybersecurity focused organizations announced the launch of a legal defense fund to support security researchers and pen testers involved in ethical hacking, as well as an advocacy group, the Hacking Policy Council, which will lobby for sound regulations around vulnerability disclosure. Eric Goldstein, Executive Assistant Director for Cybersecurity at CISA, said at a Thursday press conference, only two options exist for any given vulnerability. A good faith actor or a bad faith actor will find it. So how do we in the cybersecurity community stack the deck? How do we shift the balance of the scales to increase the likelihood that a good faith actor finds a vulnerability before a bad faith actor does? He asked. Today, in many cases, this deck is stacked in the opposite direction. There are minimal constraints limiting the freedom of operating of bad faith actors, and there's too many barriers, too much fear, too many disincentives. We have to shift that balance. Goldstein noted that the Justice Department recently amended its charging policy to explicitly discourage going after ethical security researchers. But he added that there is more that can be done to make sure researchers have the right policy, legal, and regulatory environment such that good faith actors feel like there is a safe space for them. The Legal Defense Fund will be operated by the nonprofit Center for Cybersecurity Policy and Law using initial seed funding from Google. Will provide legal guidance and, if necessary, counsel to security researchers and pen testers. Stanford professor James Dempsey, a founding member of the Security Researcher Legal Defense Fund, said in the press conference that the fund is being created to help security researchers who are unfairly targeted for discovering vulnerabilities or breaches. Dempsey referenced several examples, including two cases where state government bodies sued researchers or journalists for their work. And it goes on to detail some of those and more details about the Hacking Policy Council. The thing I find odd is that this one of the parts of EFF, and why not just concentrate everything into one versus having multiple different things?
So that's a great question. Um, between EFF and or HackerOne, right? Because working together
Mm-hmm.
underneath either one of those, you should be able to have at least legal representation or that buffer because they don't have you directly going to it. And the fact if you're working with HackerOne, you're using them as a broker basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my only guess on this, and this is just my estimation, would be them actually trying to go through and create new laws and policies that are going to be lobbied for, in effect, to help change the law. Which theoretically is a great idea. I'll be curious to see if, i.e., EFF or HackerOne works together with them or how that's because I mean I would much rather go through and work with people who have already been doing this type of process. Um, I'll be curious to see. In fact, looking a little bit further down, while it says Google was one of the several folks, other founding members include HackerOne, BugCrowd, Intel, and Trigetti and Luta Security. So HackerOne may be in. So then let's see what EFF comes back and says.
Or is this the thing where Google's not a fan of EFF and doesn't want to help the other side?
You know, I mean, that's a good point. It could be. It could be. What are your other thoughts or fears on this one?
Overall, it's probably a good thing. It's just, again, why split up the different sides where we already have the advocacy group in EFF, and then they also do some of the regulation things. But if you can get them all together into one direct thing and have everyone be able to work together and then attack it from multiple sides, that overall might be a good thing.
I 100% concur. Cool deal. All right, talking about cool tools that we found this week over from the Black Hills Information Security folks. They have released a new addition or expansion deck to their backdoors and breaches. It's now the Huntress expansion deck version 1. So there are 33 unique cards included with the Huntress expansion deck, including 4 initial compromises, 2 pivot and escalate, 4 more of the persistence, 2 of the C2 and exfil, 1 more procedure, 14 injects, and 6 additional consultants. So you and I have gone through and played this in the past. I've been pretty happy with the tabletop that going through and bringing this to either the current working location or your hackerspace to do a tabletop exercise if your company got breached. It's kind of like D&D like, I would say, or checking your actual procedures as well. How well do you know it? Do you know where to go find it and such?
Yeah, it's kind of like a deck of many things for D&D,
Yeah.
where it's not necessarily running the game for you, but it's helping you to establish what you need within the incident response cycle to then help narrate the game.
And if you didn't want to pick up the physical decks, they've been really good about being able to digitize that and make that available for free to use as well. There's also multiple webinars, downloading ebooks that you can all get access to play online.
And then you had mentioned, and I did not know about, there's now a competitive version. So I'm going to have to look at that and see what actually has evolved in that.
Yeah, so if you go to their site and you scroll on down, they've got a couple different playthroughs to where you can either do this as a tabletop, which is what it was originally meant for, but then they've gone through and done a couple different competitive modes where you can go head to head with individuals with at least 2 different types of game formats. And apparently, if you scroll down a little bit on their site, you can actually take one of these images if you wanted to set up a playmat and then go to this Inked Gaming where you can make your own custom gaming mats or mouse pads and get it printed up. So, hey, maybe we'll have to print this, and at DEF CON, LineCon, we'll have to go through and whip this thing out.
I summon Google C2.
I call on John Strand. Sorry, I just had a baby. I'm gonna have to take off, and here's another consultant. Love it. So, great resource. Go check it out, and we've got links to that in the show notes. Let's see. I don't know why I put this underneath projects for this week. I'm just gonna say for more cool tools and such. We always like talking about the different Humble bundles. We've got a new book bundle from Mastering Azure.net and SQL Server. So you can buy the expensive deck for the $18 and get 20 items, including Pro Azure Administration and Automation, Test Your Skills in C# Programming, Introduction to .NET 6, SQL Server 2022 Revealed, Pro C# 10 with .NET 6, C# Programming for Absolute Beginners, Microsoft Azure for Java developers, Practical Database Auditing for Microsoft SQL Server and Azure SQL, Beginning Azure Cognitive Services, C# 10 Quick Syntax Reference, Pro.NET on Amazon Web Service, C++ Software Interoperability for Windows Programmers, The Art of Site Reliability Engineering, SRE with Azure, Mapping Data Flows in Azure Data Factory, the Azure Data Lakehouse Toolkit, Azure Arc-Enabled Data Service Revealed, Azure Arc-Enabled Kubernetes and Services, introducing Microsoft Orleans for developers, and Pro Database Migration to Azure. You can pick those all up for $18. You want to tell us about the second one?
Yeah. So this is the Humble O'Reilly Pocket Guides bundle. These are all the smaller books, but include Biscuit, C Sharp 10, PyTorch, PowerShell, U Sharp, Data Pipelines, C, Regular Expression, Linux Pocket Guide, Machine Learning, SQL, Bash, Git, Vi and Vim, grep, as well as sed and awk. And those are 25 or 18 for everything and going down from there.
Fantastic. To wrap up on upcoming events, there's just a little thing that's getting ready. It's only like 111 days, 11 hours, 5 minutes, and 36 seconds away, right, Digital?
Yeah, too soon.
Indeed, too soon. They did go through and reveal ticket prices. If you want to pre-register, you can go on to the shop.defcon.org, get the pre-registration ticket for $460, and that's to get things like we said, pre-regged. One of the questions I've seen pop up, and I have not seen a clear answer yet, is if the pre-registration guarantees a physical badge versus a paper badge. So I'm assuming last year they went through
It
and did do that.
should.
Say what?
Yeah. Yeah, last year it guaranteed, so I would assume it'd be the same.
They have added that verbiage here to the bottom of the listing. So pre-reg does guarantee you'll receive DEF CON 31 human badge as opposed to a paper badge if we run out when redeeming your ticket in Las Vegas. Awesome. Good to know.
But as a reminder, they are not electronic this year.
That is true. That is true. So, digital, what happens if I wasn't going to preemptively buy it? What's my cost?
It'll be 440 at the door. Most
Okay.
likely explanation is credit card processing fees that last year was a $10 difference between in person and online. This time it's 20. So a slight increase on those, but
Okay.
not terrible.
Right? This is where I put on my old cap and say, back in my day, DEF CON was $180. Cost is going
And
up
even
for
if you
everything.
do
Mm-hmm.
even if you do pre-register, LineCon's still a blast. Like we talked about, we may end up having some backdoors and breaches there, or I usually bring along board games people have that are badges that they're showing off that they've made or potentially selling. There's CTFs going on, and Not Zor came through and had you playing chopsticks with little plastic babies.
That's right. We got to see some really cool different badges that were not shown up until that point, which was awesome. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I am glad that we got to go through and do that last year and spend the time because that's a hoot and a half. Yeah, and it's a great place to go through and meet new people. I can't tell you how many
Like,
years in a row meeting new folks is awesome.
mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a little girl this last year that was super excited that I forget if it was her first year, but she later went on to get her ham radio license. So it also helps encourage others to get involved and get excited, see the community grow.
Absolutely, right? And I'm going to do that shameless plug and I'm going to say here's a link that I'll throw into the show notes as well for if you've never gone to DEF CON but you want to see what it feels like, if you will. We did a video of walking into the Caesars Palace, finding LineCon, and then going through and staying at LineCon. So while we didn't record people's faces, when we were taking pictures and posting online and such, when it came to posting the video online, I did a lot of digital scrubbing to make sure there weren't any faces so nobody could be identified. It was a pro because there was also masks on for folks, but um, it's hard to capture exactly what DEF CON is in person without violating people's privacy. So in the past, they were very much a hey, if you want to go to DEF CON, if you see a camera, you can flip it off. Then things started getting more lax. Then we had COVID. So this was my attempt to be able to try to give the feel without outing people, if you will.
Yeah, speaking of masks, there is a new policy for that as well.
Ah,
They are no longer required, but are still recommended.
Okay, gotcha. So they have recommended masks as an option, and we'll see how that ends up going along. On one hand, it
Yeah.
makes sense. On the other hand, there are other people with compromised immune systems. I'm hoping everybody can just treat each other, since everybody has their own threat models. Just be chill with whatever that individual needs to do for themselves.
And if you do have symptoms, please don't go to parties.
Right?
Became an issue last year.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll say I made it out of DEF CON last year without getting infected. And unfortunately, within our group digital, we found out a couple people that we had been in quote unquote contact with ended up starting coming down with it. And at that point, it's like, hey, can I stay and hang out for a little while longer and risk getting COVID versus take off and get back home? Well, I want to visit with these people more, but I had a a person at home with a compromised immune system, so I'm like, nope, I'm noping out. It's great to see you, but I'm not gonna risk it at that time.
Yeah, I think I was still under my immunity from having it about a month previous, but was
Right,
still trying to make sure that I wasn't spreading anything, even if it wasn't just COVID.
right, absolutely, absolutely. Well, good deal on
On
the.
crud was definitely a thing before COVID.
What was that? Oh, the con crud. Yes, absolutely. Uh, I will say from experience of going through and handling money when we were exchanging money for badges for the Darknet contest. If you were one of those people who were handling it and you didn't put on gloves, inevitably you would come down with something. So over the years, I went from not manning that position to also supplying gloves and supplying hand sanitizer each year to say you can do it as much as you want to, or hey, we're doing fist bumps or elbow bumps. I'm not going to touch your dirty money. Anyway, cool. Let's see. Anything else on the DEF CON side?
I think the last thing that we had was the DEF CON 31 call for papers.
Ooh, this could be
They
your
are,
year.
yep, they are open and they will conclude August, or no, that's when it is. Call for papers will close May 1st, 2023.
So as of time of recording, you've got roughly, let's see, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10 days from now. Interesting thing that they also did this year, digital, is they ended up doing a get together on how to make a good proposal. So you can hopefully find that online. They've also got their recommendations when it comes to it on their same page that we've got linked. You can go through and click the DEF CON call for papers form and start filling stuff out. All right. You want to talk about any projects that you're going through and working on, or that you're excited about, digital?
Um, the one I'm working on, I can't really talk about a whole lot yet. But need to get to work on that since, again, with work being fairly busy and a lot of things going on, I haven't had a chance to really play with it a lot.
Mm,
I'm excited to get it all working.
awesome. Let's see. On my side of the house, I finally pulled my head out of my butt and am focusing on a couple projects instead of working on all of them at the same time. So I'm getting focused on three projects. Oh, and like four projects. We got the Darknet contest preparation that's going on with the badges that you and I have been working with that we're going to be leaking and talking about here soon, much sooner than we usually do in years past. But then on the other projects, focusing a channel on getting started with Linux and Linux sysadmin tips and tricks. Secondary channel on just infosec and hacking, and then a third channel I'm actually going to be working with my boys on to help folks get into the maker projects, because there are so many of these other things that cross over with each other. Some of them I've published online, some of them I've not, but then the boys need to learn how to do some of this stuff too. So we did an entire training last weekend, got a course, and they were sitting down going through with the course with me. So we're going through a review this week of doing a like one of the boxes, the monthly boxes that you can get sent, where they went through, built it, filmed it, doing a voiceover and all that jazz. So getting kind of excited to be able to start sharing more content out that direction, and also to help the next generation, right?
Hmm.
So I'm also curious to see what DEF CON's going to do with DEF CON Kids this year. So I know that's
Yeah,
one
there
of the
has
things,
been a whole lot of news on that.
right? Right. So we'll see where all that comes in. So let's see. You can go if you want to be able to talk to us, shout out at us, tell us know that we did something wrong or that there's something else that we should be following. You can find me on Twitter at Gator GATER_BYTE on both Twitter and on defcon.social.
And for the same, I'm at digital_tinker.
All right. Thanks for joining us live. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you got something out of it. And we'll see you same bat time, same bat station next week.
See you then.
Bye.